Go ahead, Darren.
So welcome everyone to the January meetup of the Sri Lanka Power BI community. We hope you've had a good start to 2023 and we look forward to seeing you join in our meetups as the year progresses. Um, just before we get started, just a reminder that this is a recorded session and if you do not wish to be part of a recorded session, now would be the time to drop. So today we've got two speakers. We've got a featured session by Fowmy Abdulmuttalib, who is the head of ERP and BI at McDonald's Saudi Arabia. He'll be talking to us about allocation and visualization of budgets with seasonality using Power Query and DAX. And then we have a community session by Madushan Dahanayake, senior consultant, data in AI at Intellint. So we move on to our first session. So we have Fowmy, as I mentioned, who's head of BI and ERP at McDonald's. He also founded ExcelFort Consulting Services, which specializes in training, consulting, and building business intelligence solutions using the Microsoft Power Platform. He's also a Microsoft certified business intelligence professional with extensive experience in finance, accounting, and data analytics. Fowmy, we gladly welcome you and thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to conduct this session for us. Um, the screen is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren. Let me share my PowerPoint. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yes, we can get started. Thank you again for inviting me for this first session in 2023. And I wish everyone a happy and a prosperous year of 2023. And yes, already Warren introduced me. So let me share a bit more. I've been a finance professional and turned to data and BI last 4 to 5 years. So mainly focus on Power BI and Power Platform related technologies. So I also provide consulting and training on basically Power BI and Advanced Excel for solutions. And I am the leader of Power BI user group here in Jeddah. So during my free time, I create videos on YouTube and share through my YouTube channel, which you can reach. It's ExcelFort. Okay. And if you like to get connected with me, I have my LinkedIn where I'm active and also my Twitter handle. So please feel free to contact and reach out to me for anything, for any help, support. Right. So with this, let's move on with our today's session. So the topic today is allocation and visualization of budgets, right, with seasonality. So we all have heard about targets and budgets in business scenarios where we do budgets usually on a higher granularity, right, by brand, by business units, right, by different time periods, like even that is at a higher level like quarterly, monthly, yearly. Right, we never go and budget it at a detail level, lower level, right? So the challenge here is to when you are handed a budget, you need to split it, allocate it at to a lower level, maybe to a daily, right, by product category and so on. So in these scenarios, how we can handle them in Power Query and Power BI, basically, to get it into a shape where we can use it for analyzing and visualizing, right? So in this session, what I'm going to mainly focus on is first the Power Query. I'm going to use Power Query as the ETL tool here to transform the data, right, to get it into a level where we can use it for our report, right? Where we will look at how to methodically create queries and organize them. And also we'll be able to see how we can create custom functions to accomplish certain repeated activities, right, using custom functions. And then once we do that, load the data into Power BI, then we'll see how we build effective measures to visualize data to be more dynamic, right? This is the summary of today's session that I'm going to cover. This is going to be a demo-heavy session. If you want to ask any questions in between, please go ahead. The short one, quick ones, I can just answer and move on. And definitely at the end, we have a Q&A session. I can answer any question that takes time or longer to answer. Fine. Yeah, with this, let me get started with my demo for today. Okay. Are you able to see my Power BI file, Gokula? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay,
Yep,
great.
sorry.
Yeah, so this is what we are aiming to build today. So the aim here is, not to create visually attractive visuals or report design here. It's all about the functionality based on the allocation of budget. So let me give you a context. Okay, so here the report I'm looking at is a comparison of sales, actual sales versus budget performance for a company. Let's say this is Contoso data. So what I have here is sales data for 2021, right? I have actual data up to 15th of May. So I have given the date filter from 1st January to 31st December, the full year. So what you see here is up to 15 May, we have achieved 5.8% of our budget, right? So here this chart shows, what is the amount that we have achieved and what is the total target here, 1.1 billion, and 449 million has been made so far. And on the right, I have product categories and the actual sales, budget sales, and what is the variance and the percentage is given, right? So this is fully functional. As you can see, though I have not filtered up to 15 May, it is still showing only up to 15 May if you look at the numbers, like 449 versus 424 million, right? So whenever new sales come in, let's say now we are on 15th of May, when there is new sales, this will automatically get refreshed. I mean, automatically adjust itself to show the latest status with us without having to adjust the dates. Even on the right, where we have some trends by month and quarter, we see the actual sales and the budgeted sales and the percentages, right? Achievement. So here even we see the correct amount being displayed. The challenge is what? It is simple to build a chart like this, but the challenge is the data, right? Let's have a look at, let's go and have a look at our data model. So basically what I have here is three product related dimension. I have product category, then product subcategory, and the category. They are all connected using one-to-many relationship. Then I have my fact table, which is sales transaction, where I have a connection to one-to-many connection to the product table. That's the relationship. Then I have my dates table here, right? To slice and dice by month, quarter, and year. I have created a date table and connected to sales transaction. And this is my budget table where I have sales by date and product category, right? So let's have a look at the data. Now I have product category. Then this is my sales transaction. So it is at a daily level by order numbers, right? So this is the granularity of the data. Now, if you look at the budget sales, budget also I have done it so that, you have it at product category and daily level, right? At date level. So you see the amounts, they are different. They are not the same amount, right? So it has been allocated. Now, let's go back and see how the data for this budget was presented to us. Like you see a format as such, it's at daily level, but as I told you before, we never get a budget at daily level, so we need to allocate it. Let me start with Excel file where I have my budget data and see how we can go on from there. Okay, let's suppose you are developing a report for a company and for Contoso, and you are expected to build a sales versus budget dashboard, a Power BI report, and for you to compare, the marketing department has shared you the budgeted numbers for the year 2021, right? So the way they have done the budget is by product category. There are product categories, 8 categories here. So for the whole of 2021, they have budgeted this amount. So as I showed you in my Power BI report, you are expected to create something similar. Okay. Now, if you look at these amounts, now how they have budgeted is like by different seasons, right? Now here you get 4 seasons, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So yeah. So we have percentages allocated for each product category, right? So what I mean is here, season 1, they're expecting 23% of the sales to be achieved, right? They have budgeted 23% of 27 million to come, and so on. So we have 25 in season 2, 24, 28, and the total is 100, right? In some cases, they are not budgeting any amount in some quarters, like some seasons, right? There is no number here in 3 and 4, season 3 and 4, right? So these are the percentages they have given you. So based on this, you need to allocate the budgeted sales amount into different seasons. Now you must be wondering, okay, season 1 represents a time period. So where is it mentioned? So let's open up the table just right below. So you have season 1 here. Now season 1 refers to January 1 to 31st March. There are 74 days in this period. And season 2 is 16 March to 20 July, and so on. So you have from January 1st to 31st December, the complete year, and 4 seasons, right? So they're expecting the budget to be placed in this manner. And now simply what you're going to do is like, let's just do it in Excel and just show you what is the work, how we are going to approach this. And for, let's take audio. Audio total annual budget is this much. And they're expecting 23% in season 1, right? And that is going to be 6.2 million should be allocated for first season. That is from January 1st to March 15. Now, this sale should be divided by 74 because there are 74 days in that season. Then you will get a daily sale of 84,525. So this 84,525 should be repeated from January to March 15. And we need to repeat for each and every product category so that we will have a daily level budget numbers. Okay, but this is not that difficult. We can do it. There is something more to it. We have identified their actual sale has seasonality within the week itself, like by weekdays, like each weekday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday will have different sales, right? There is a pattern. So let me go back to my file and show you. Okay, let's have a look at the actual sales and the pattern by week. Okay, now what I have done here in this sheet, I have my date and the actual sales. Actual sale is just a measure that is summing up the actual sales amount. Okay, this is the sales amount. Okay, this is the sales amount. And here I have included the sales amount and the date, right? If you see the pattern, there is a pattern that is going on in the sales trend over here. The numbers, hype numbers are like for weekends. Like if you see maybe here, I can show you the weights. It's usually weekends. Weekend sales is higher, weekdays sales lower, right? So we also need to incorporate this effect into our budgeting as well, right? So let me now go back to my Excel file, and at the end over here, I have got my weightage also for the weekdays. Like, so here we have from the actual sales, we have received the weights like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are lower, Thursday 0.86, and so on. Friday, Saturday, Sunday are doing high sales, right? So if you add all of these weights, you get 7. That means in a week you get 7 days. So if you split into 1 week, these are the weightages. So we need to apply these weightages to this weight into the sales that we saw before, right? Now, how will we do that? So earlier what we saw was let's take audio sales that will be multiplied by 23%. And this is divided by 74 will give me, this 74 will give me the daily sales, right? Now, on any given Monday within the first season, right? So the weight should be this. I can take and multiply by this 0.5 and so on, right? Now, if you go by this, then you get different sales amounts on different days, right? This is only, this is within the week. So you get 46,000 on Monday and so on. You see the highest sale is coming on Saturdays, weekends, that is 136,000. So if you check the average of this, it should be yeah, 84,524, right? This is the whole week. So when we split,
Fowmy, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt. There's a question about how the weights are calculated.
these weights are like based on the actual sales. We get it from, let's say I just explained, we are getting the budget numbers and the weights from the marketing department for us to work out the budget numbers, right? So we haven't calculated here, right? It has been given to us. This is the weight. Now, even if you take the actual sales, you can calculate the weightage on that, right? So what is the sales, average sales on each, you can take the average sales by weekdays. Monday, what is the average sales from the actual? And you can change it into a weight based on 7.
Okay, thanks. Soshan, I hope that answers your question.
Hope that is clear. Okay. So let's move on. So our task is to the whatever weight they have given, maybe they will change the weights, right? So we will have to apply whatever weights we have given. This is source data that we have for us to work with, right? Now, with this data, what we are going to do is create a table, and the table should look like this. A tabular format layout, which will be used in our Power BI report, right? This is what we need in a Power BI data model. I need the category, the date, and the daily sale amounts. Daily sales is now split into dates, right, from this granularity. So we need to take into consideration the seasons and the weights and split the amount. This 1.1 billion has to be splitted. Let's get started. If you have any questions before we start, please let me know. I can clarify on anything.
No, we don't have any questions.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's open up a file. Yeah, the same file I showed you before, but we haven't finished it. We have built it only with actual sales now. There is no budget data here. If you see my model, I don't have a budget here, only the product category, subcategory product, and the sales data, and only the dates, right? So we need to bring in the budget after allocating it in the level we want, right? So right now what I have is a single measure that shows here the total sales, right? And another measure which calculates the last available business date where we have sales. So I'm calculating it using like max of order date after removing filter from all the tables, right? So that way I get 15 May every time here. So fine. Now, first we will get into Power Query. Okay, fine. The Excel file that I showed you just a while ago, I have connected to it. So nothing but this is just a connection to the Excel file. Now in this, I have stored, if you have seen all my data in tables, right? So if you look at the column that says kind, what we can do is we can filter only table kinds so that it's easy to deal with that. Okay, just a second. Let me just connect to my file. Okay, so I filtered on table so that as I showed you before, we have the daily wage, seasonality, and the budget data, right? Okay, the first step is to make sure when you create queries, you organize your queries into folders, right? So I have a separate folder for Excel source where I am connecting to that particular Excel file. So from here, I'm going to extract whatever tables I want and work on it. That is one of the best practices you can do, right? So why I'm saying this is like now from here, I have all the tables. First, I need to get the table where I have my budget numbers, right? So with seasonality. So this table I want, so I'm going to like, there are two options. Either you can use duplicate or reference. So let me show you duplicate what it does. It actually creates another copy, but again, referring to the source. See, this is where I stored the file. So it is referring back to the source. So what happens is this is not efficient. If you go to your View tab and click on query dependency, this will clearly show you a diagram where it is connecting, right? Now, if you see, this is my first source, I duplicated it. Again, it is going to connect to the source, right? So instead of this method, what I'm going to do is right click and delete this. And once you delete, this option will refer to the source once you reference it. So reference, if you see, there is just one step and it is referring to the source data. Okay, so we can make changes in the source data query and have it ready so that other queries can refer. And also now, if you look at the query dependency, now you will have a single connection. Source data is connected only once, and you can refer to other tables or other entities within this Excel workbook. So the benefit is like if you have like this now, say suppose if I want to change my location of the file that I have stored, you can simply go and change it only once. Otherwise, you'll have to change it in multiple instances, right? So now I have this table. Let me go and expand. I have created a link, basically a reference. Now, what I need now is the budget numbers here. So I can click on the table, right? So I'm looking at the table with category and the budgeted sales and the percentages for each season. So the last row is the total. I don't need it. I can filter it out by removing this null. And also I remember there was a column for the total. We don't need it. I can just hit delete and remove it. Okay. Now our table is good. Let's give it a name. Let's say budget. This is 2021. So this is my table. Now this is my source, and budget is a table where we are going to use it in our data model, right? One more thing I can show you is like you can create folders as you want. Like this time I'm going to create a new group. Okay, folders are called group in this. I'm just saying a model. So why I'm calling this model is I'll move all the queries that are supposed to go into my model, right? Every query here is not supposed to go into the model, right? For example, the source data table, that doesn't have to go there. So the budget, yes, budget table has to go. We need to work on this table, but I can move it. Even the product category, subcategory, and sales, I can move it. You can click, drag, and drop it into this. So these are the tables that I need for my model, right? Now let's work on this budget table. So how do you transform this table into the level I wanted and explained before? The first thing, we have these seasons in the column, so we need to transform it into row level so that we'll be able to access and do the right transformation. So for that, we can use unpivot. You can select these columns using control. You can select multiple columns, and if you right click, you have the option to unpivot. Let's choose unpivot other columns, because basically what I need is to unpivot these seasons, right? Seasonality columns. So let me put unpivot other columns. Now I have repeated a product category for each season, right? So I have the sales here, budgeted sales, and this is season 1. I can rename it. So if you look at the formula inside here, the M formula, here it is giving attribute and value for each column. So instead of attribute, I can call it season ID, and the other one we can call it as factor. Okay, this is the factor to multiply, right, our sales. Now what I need is here, I just need to get the sales, budgeted sales multiplied by the relevant factor. So I can select budgeted sales and factor. I need to add a column. On the add column, you can click standard, then let's choose multiply. Yeah, this is the amount that is multiplied. The factor is multiplied by the budgeted sales amount. So now once we do that, we don't need the factor and the budgeted sales amount, because we have the sales. So I can delete them. So we are left with the category, season ID, and the sales for each season. Fine. Now I can also rename this to, let's say, sales. Okay. So now we have done some transformation onto this. So next thing is like I need to find out what is the time period for each of these seasons, right? Season 1 is starting from January. I think it's ending in March. So I need that time period here for me to split this further, right? What I really want to do is now, if you take 6.2 million here, that is for season 1, I need to split into, we saw that it was 74 days, I remember. 74 rows, lines, right? Now, to do that, I need to first bring the seasonality. So where is the seasonality? Is in a table, right? So if you go back to your source data, you have a table called seasons here. Now, if you look at this, and I have the seasons. Now, I just need to extract this into a new query. Similarly, I can right click and say reference, right? Now, this time I'll make it as seasons. Okay. Now I can move this table. I'm not to load. only for my working, right? So I can create another folder. You can send it to a new group, move to new group. Let's name it as staging. So I can put it right after source. So this is the best practice that I'm just telling you. So you have your source, you have your staging group, then you have the model. So all the staging activities you are doing will remain here. And finally, the whatever the queries you have in the model will get loaded to the model. So now I have the seasons. Here, what I want to do is expand the seasons table. Yeah, this is the data I have for this. Now, what I need to do is I need to get the start date and end date onto my budget query. So for that, we can simply go home and click on merge and select our seasons column. And we have it. So there has to be a common key in both the tables for you to connect and get the information. So here I have season ID. Here also I have season ID, right? But you see a problem here. I select columns of the same type number. Yes. Now, when you do merging, remember the columns have to be in the same type, right? Data type. Now, looking at this column, you see this is left aligned. I can say this is text and this is number, right? So we need to correct that. So let me go back to my seasons table and season ID. I can change it to text. So it can either insert a new step or already this is a change type step. So I can say replace current one. So it will include it in the same step. Now let me go back to my budget and I need to merge, right, with the season ID, merge queries, select seasons, and this is my season over here. Now I have 30 out of 30 matching. Let me click OK. So now it brings the whole table, right? This is the beauty of Power Query. In Excel, you have text, date, numbers, and so on. But in Power Query, you have structured data type, like not only like text, numbers, you also can store tables, list, records inside a cell here, right? So from here now you are able to expand this. So what I need from here is, whatever matching records have been brought in. So let me go and choose what I need. I need only the starting date and the end date. Okay, great. Now, once I have this starting and end date, what I need to do is use this to go ahead and calculate the daily amount. Okay. Now, at this point, I don't need my season ID, right? I can delete it. If you see every time I start a new step, I just make sure I delete all my existing unnecessary columns, right? This is another best practice. Why is it is important to keep only the required columns? This is performance. So Power Query, how it works is like, there are steps over here. So this is my first step, right? Whatever is generated in the first step will be transferred to the second step. You see source is coming here. Now, if you go to the last step, this is the name of the step is removed column, right? And this is referring to my previous step, like expanded seasons. So what it does is it goes in a snowflake manner, like one table refers to the previous one. You can also refer to the other tables, not necessarily the previous one. So it's transforming the whole table, right? So the more you have, it's going to be a burden on the performance. So you always make sure you keep only the required number of columns, right? Right now, we have the product category, sales, start date, and end date. So from here, what are we supposed to do? Now, I have audio, I have the amount for this season, I have the number of days. So what I need is like another column uh, where I have 74 days of sales, right? So that I can expand it, right, into 74 lines. So how do I get this? Because I have the difference. I need to calculate the difference between 15 March and 1st January, which is 74, right? And this 74, what I need to do is, divide this 6.2 million, divide this 6.2 million by this 74, then you will get daily sales. And spread it across 74 days, right? So each line will be split into 74 days. That's the idea. And if you see the operation that I just explained has to be carried out for each and every row here, right? So we see some similar process going to be repeated for each row. So we need to take the sales, the difference between days, split, and create 74 rows. That way we will have the daily budget. So this, for us to do this repeated job, what we need to do is create a custom function. Okay. This way we'll be able to apply that, use that, call that function, and split our table into daily granularity. In order to create a custom function, first the approach is first create a query and convert it into a function. So the first step that we need here is let's create another folder, a group called functions. This is not necessary, but it will make your job easier when you group things together. Right. Under this, let's create a new blank query. So I can name it as prefix function budget. So let's name it query. Okay. So currently there is nothing in this, right? In this query. What this query is supposed to do is, receive the budgeted sales, start date and end date, and return a table of numbers at a daily level. Right. Now, to pass the value, right, from this table, from sales, start date, and end date, we can use parameters. So we need to create 3 parameters for sales, start date, and end date. So over here, you have new parameters. So what I'm going to do is first create a parameter called sales amount, which is going to be in the type of decimal number. Current value, you can put anything, but let me have the first row number so that we can easily test it and make sure things work. We'll add another parameter for the start date. Our start date here is January 1, 2021. And we need the end date. End date is 15th of March. 15th March 2021. 15th March 2021. So we have created 3 parameters. Okay. I can move these parameters into my functions folder. We are working on functions. So now, what's the approach that I'm going to take is to first create a list of all the dates between 1st January and 15 March, right? To create a list, I start the query with a list. To construct a list, you can use curly brackets over here. This represents a list. So you can have elements inside a list. Let's say, let me increase this. So you can have, let's say, 1, 2, 3. So this is a simple list. You may have mix of anything, like even text, booleans, whatever it is, right? And you can even create a list like, let's say, A to Z. This will create a list of A to Z and so on. I'm not going to go into so much into list. There is a lot you can do with the list. You can stack multiple lists inside another list. That's also possible. So if you want a series of numbers like, 1 to 10, so this generates a list of numbers. Okay. So with this knowledge, what we are going to do is we are going to have our start date and end date, then generate a list of dates. What is the start date in our first example? That is start start date, right, to end date. Let's see if it works. We cannot apply operator dot to types date and date, right? So it has to be a number. It cannot expand on date. So we need to convert this date into a number. So there are functions in Power Query to convert the date. So let's go and use one of those functions. I use you can use number from, but I will use int64 from 64. What it does is this function, even if you have date and time, it will just grab only the date and convert it into a number. Okay, so let me use int64 from. Okay, so I have list of days, right? 74 days, as you see. Now, this is a list. There are special functions you can do with list, but I just need to convert this into a table. So you can click on to table, and let's click on this. And I have a table now. So this is in number format. I can mixed format. Let me change it to number. Right, so I have up to 15th of March. So we have 1st January to 15 March. Let me rename it to date. Done. Now, what is next? For each of these dates, I just need to bring the amount and divide it by 74. Right, before that, remember we have a weightage to apply for each date, right? So how do you get the weight? That is in another table. Let me go to source and check day weights, right? Here we have all the weights. So let's grab this with a reference to it. And I can name it as weights. This should be moved to staging, as I'm not going to use it for my modeling actually. So to stop this being loaded to the model, you can right click and say enable load. You can untick this so that it won't be loaded. Now it is italicized. We don't need it for our data model for any analysis. So I can do for both seasons and weight, right? Now I have the weight. Actually, I need to drill down into the weights table and have it ready. So I can click on the table. And the last row is the total. I don't need it, so I can untick on null. So I have it. Weekday 1 to 7, I have the weightage. So it's a simple matter of like merging it. Let me go to my query, budget query. So what is the common key here? So day is like 1 to 7, but here I don't have 1 to 7 for the day, right? So any date you have here, when you go to add column, this from date and time in this section, you get these functions activated. From here, I need to extract day of week, right? Now it is coming from 0 to 6. Actually, what we have is a 1 to 7. Okay. So what we are going to do is add +1 to this so that we will solve the problem. Okay, now we have 1 to 7. There is one more issue. The date starts here with 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, but the order in which we have is different. Let me see my Excel file. The starting day should be Monday, I believe. So let me open up my Excel file. Okay. So here Monday is 1, right? So that's how we have set it up here. So to change the starting, what we can do is there is a parameter for the day of week. I will use that parameter to specify day dot Monday. Now, if you see 3rd January start on 7th, if you apply this, yeah, now it's 7th. So this way, what you can do is you can apply the starting day of the week, for this function, day of the week. So in this case, the week has to start on Monday. Fine. Once you have this, now we can merge with the table that we have for the weights. So let me go and grab merge queries and pick my weights and day of week. Let me go to my weights table. Yeah, weekday 1 to 7. And let me go to my budget query. Okay, 1 to 7. And let's do a merge on weights, day of week. Okay. Let me close this file. Yeah, the file was being open on the other screen, so that's why it didn't allow me to do it. So now I have matched these two columns and got all the 74 day of the week matched. Now it returns a table. From here, what I need is to extract only the weight for this particular day. Right. Now I don't need the day of the week. I can just remove it. Okay. Now with this, what I'm going to do is I need to get the sales amount, right, that I already have in my parameter, and divide it by the sum of the weights, right? The weight here is like individual lines. So I need to add all these numbers, weight numbers, and get it together. So what I can do is to store it, I can click on this FX and it will create a new step, copy the below. You can have anything here in this step, right? So you can have your own calculation, right? In this case, 1. But what I need here is, let me delete this. The moment you insert, it brings the previous one. So what do you need from the previous one? You are referring to the whole table here, right? So if you go back to the table, there are 2 columns. I only want to refer to the weight column so that I can sum it. So I can, at the end, you can call that particular field using weight. Now this should show me only that particular column as a list. So you can apply a sum function here, list.sum, to sum the values. So now you get the total, right? I have added it in a step called total. And let me rename this so that it's meaningful. Total weights. Okay. Now, this is my table where I was working. I just created an intermediate step to store the total value, 74. Now, I'll go back and call the previous step, right, which is this over here, removed columns. Right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the total sales and divide it by the weights, and then multiply by each line so that I'll get the correct amount. So let me add a column. So in this column, what I'm going to do is say I need the total sales amount, I believe. That's the parameter. Yeah, sales amount. I want to divide it by the step that I created, total weights. Now you get the same amount, right? I'm just dividing this 83,000 because there is no weight applied now. I divide it by the total. Now it's a matter of going and multiplying it by the weight column, which is this particular column value. Now you get the correct amount over here. Okay, so now we have given the right amount for each and every line over here. Okay, so with this, what we are going to do is we are going to use this query to convert it into a function. Okay. Now I don't need the weight. Now I can call this as sales and change the type to number. Okay. Now once we have done that, we have it. To convert a query into a function, so you can just right click on the query and say create function. We can give it a name as budget, function budget. Now we have created a function. It has 3 parameters. Since we used our parameters in our query, it identify automatically, yes, I need to ask for 3 parameters, right? Sales amount, start date, and end date. So now you can use this query to perform anything. Let's feed, let's say 1000. The start date is, let's say 1st January to 31st January. If you invoke it, it will split it, right? It's a common use function now with the logic. So this is not our purpose. So let me remove this and go to my function. Yeah, this is perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is go to my query, budget query, and I need to disable load. I don't need that, right? So this function, how do I use it now? So I have the sales amount, start date, and end date. Now I should be able to call it under add column, the invoke function. Let's call this function from here, and I want to refer to the column. Column is sales amount will be taken from the sales start date. There's also a column start date. End date will go and pick from end date. So now I have the data coming in for this particular date. Let me expand this. What I need is the date and the sales. I don't need this sales start date and end date anymore. So I can delete this. Now this should be date. And this we can call it as sales since I already had a column. This is sales. And let's give it a format. Okay. So I have done the splitting of the sales that we had at the granularity of category level into daily level now, right? By category. Yeah, we have completed the first part of it. Now we are going to load this data into our data model and create a few measures just to show you how it will be used in a report, basically. Gokula, I might go a few minutes more than what I'm supposed to cover. Hope that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so okay, fine. Now let me close and apply. I added the file in the Meetup page. If anybody wants to download it at the end of this session, you may download it from the Meetup page. Is that location fine, Gokul?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, I can share with you, so maybe you can put it there, right? I think.
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, now what happened? So we transformed the data, and now let's go and have the first thing. Once you loaded the data, so you go to the modeling tab and see where the table is. Here we go. We have our budget now. So I need to have a look at it. So I have a new table here with like sales and date and product category, right? So now if you go and go to the model, and we need to create the relationship. So budget has two fields basically to connect. One is the date. So I will create a relationship between date and product category. Okay, fine. Now I have my actual sales. I have created a measure for that. Now I need a new measure to sum the budgeted sales. So let's call it total budget sales. This is sum of budget 2021 sales. Okay, so let's apply some formatting. Okay. So now we have the measure. We should be able to compare actual versus budget. So let me drag and drop it. So I have the numbers here. By category, I have the total amount, total budget for the whole year is shown up here, 1.1 billion, right? Where I just want to see the budgeted amount only up to 15th of May, right? If I move this to, let's say, 15th of May using this slicer, I should get the correct amount. Yeah. See, I have 424 million budgeted, but we have done, and we have done 449 million, right, over the budget. So tomorrow when the sales come, you don't want the user to go and change this to 16, right? So, and also, if you look at the trending here, you have the actual sales. Now let me add the total budgeted sales. So the other requirement from the team is like, you should be able to show the complete sales for the whole year, right, up to December. Now here, if you keep up to 15, you see the right amount. Comparison is correct. Now May we have done 40 million budgeted, but we have done 60 million. This is correct. But if you expand this, now things go wrong, where it's showing here 1.1 billion and yeah, the rest of the months, I mean, the sales correct, but look at May. It was 40 million. Now it is 81 million. Why? We are filtering. We have sales up to 15 May, but budget doesn't care about that budget measure. It's showing up to 31st May. So how to handle this? Right. For that, we need to like modify our measures, play with the filter context, basically. So now I have a measure total budgeted sales. This is a base measure. I can just keep it. Let me create a new measure. So what I need to do is I need to calculate the sales total. Let's call it actual sales is the other measure. I'll call it budget sales to be simple. Now, how do we build a measure for this? So what is the logic? So I need to take this last date measure that I already have, right? It always give me the date where we have sales up to when we have sales in the sales table. That will give me the date, the last date. So I need to get that date first, right? Let me store it in a variable call last date. So this is a measure. I can just store it in this. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the sales, total sales measure, right? Let me also include that adjusted sales. Okay. So I want to change the context where it always has to calculate the sales on or before the last sales available date, 15th of May. I can use calculate. I'm going to modify the measure calculation of total budget sales, where I'm going to say date should be less than or equal to my variable, which has the last date, right? So this last date has, in this case, 15th of May. It will not exceed that. So let me close this measure and let's say return adjusted sales. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, bit of formatting. Okay, so now I have my budget sales. Instead of this sales, let me also add this. Yeah, now you see the correct sales, right? Up to 15 May, 424 million. So this is not correct. And how about here? I can remove the total budgeted sales and include the budget sales. Yeah, there is a problem here. Now, it's showing for the full year, but it's showing 424 million for each on each month. That's the sales that we see here, right? Even in January, it's showing up to 15th of May. Even in December, it's showing 15th of May. Why is that? What is the cause? How can we rectify this? So it has to show the correct amount for January here, February here. For May, it has to show only up to 15. For the rest of the months, it has to show the total budget amount. So if you have a look at the measure that I built, so what happens here is look at the filter modification here. What am I doing to the existing filter context? I am just overwriting the date filter with less than or equal to last date. So wherever there is date filter here, it is overwriting it to less than or equal, but it doesn't respect the existing filter context, right? So when it is January, what I want to do is it has to check, right? If already there is a date filter that coming from the dates, then it has to respect it. To do that, we can use keep filter. Keep filters will have basically an and condition, right? It will check both the conditions. So if January sale is coming and it is less than or equal, it also falls within that, it will apply it. So let me show you, then you will understand better. Yeah, now you see that it doesn't show the rest of the month, but we will fix it. But now you see January is the correct amount. Okay. February is also okay. And March, we are getting the correct amount of 40 million, right? So this way, we will be able to adjust the filter context, right? Overwriting behavior using keep filters. Now, the other challenge is I just want to show the rest of the months, right? So what we can do to the measure is I can like add here, add a variable. Let's call it result. What I need to do here is to check, okay, if the date, last date that we have is within the selected period, in this case May. If it falls within May, then only you apply the adjusted sales, like this particular sales where you adjust it. Otherwise, you can simply show the measure itself, right? The total sales. Okay, let me show you. So if the last date I have is within the, okay. I use values because it can give you what is in the current filter context, right? So what is visible in the current, in this case, all the May dates are visible from 1st to 31st May. It checks if 15 May is within that, but in April, it doesn't exist, right? So if it is the case, then adjust the sales. Otherwise, no need to do any adjustments, just return this measure as it is. This is a sum of the total sales. Okay. Now, instead of returning adjusted sales, let me return the result now. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay. Yeah, now we have 40 million showing up. That is the correct amount. And this looks okay. Now here also we have 424 million. And I can remove this measure, and this is correct. And if you move your slider, it shows correctly for the period that you have selected. If you select, say, March, we're looking at March performance, right? This is shows only up to March date, March 15, for example. So this way you will be able to handle it. Now, not only that, now if you go to a quarter level, there also you will get the budget sales. Okay, now this way, you should be able to play with the filter context and get what you need to be shown in your report. Now, the rest of the measures are pretty simple, like actual versus target and the percentage and so on. Okay. I think this is what I have got to share today. Any questions so far?
Yeah, for me, I think there was one question from Sushan. He says there are 8 product groups, 4 seasons. There should be 32 rows, but you have 30. I assume one product group has 2 nulls causes the removal automatically when multiplied.
Okay, good question. Yeah, what he asked was like, yeah, he multiplied it. When you unpivot, if there is any blank, that gets removed. Okay, let me just show you. I did it in my budget, right? So here you have these two, right? Now, for example, season 3 games and toys, that won't come here because when you unpivot, the nulls are removed. Okay, so we saw that it is games and toys season 3, right? So if you go to games and toys, you see there is only 2, right? The null is not there. Yeah, that's correct. During unpivot, it removes the null. Hope I answered the question. Okay.
Okay, I think if there are any other questions, you can drop it in the chat. And Fowmy, will you be sticking around till the end?
Yeah, I'll be there for some time, actually. No problem.
Okay. So with that, let's move on to our next session.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gokula. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you very much, Fowmy, for that very detailed and I'm sure very rather insightful session. Next, we move on to our featured session by Madushan Dahanayake, Senior Consultant Data and AI at Intellint. So Madushan will be talking to us about dynamic visuals without the workarounds in Power BI. Madushan, over to you.
Thanks, Juan. Just a quick mic check to see if everything's okay.
Yep, loud and clear.
Just quickly share the screen. Hi, everyone. I'm Madushan Dahanayake, and hope everyone's having a great start to the year and looking forward to all the new things we can learn this year as well. On that note, I want to give a quick thanks to Google for the opportunity to share a few things I've learned over the last few months on Power BI. So a quick introduction here. Like one said, mentioned, I work as a senior consultant at Fortude and Intellint. I've had about over 5 years of experience in BI and in the cloud space. If there is specialization as such, I would say that it's in building easy to use semantic models and analytics platforms for users and organizations. And if you want to get in touch with me, these are my handles on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can reach out and ask me anything you might want. All right, so let me just quickly get into the next slide. Right, so today we're going to learn about how we can create dynamic visuals without the workarounds in Power BI. Now, you might be thinking, what exactly are dynamic visuals? Aren't the visuals in Power BI dynamic by nature? Yes, they are in a way. So the dynamism that you might be thinking of is the reactions to certain visuals or in the between certain visuals, right? So for example, if you click on a bar chart, the other bar charts or the other charts or visuals in a page might update and highlight or filter. But the dynamic visuals that I mean here is specifically about the users being able to change a visual altogether in a report. So it should be something that should be possible on the fly, meaning that a report creator need not change a visual and then publish it for the visual to be dynamic. That doesn't make any sense. That does not make anything dynamic. So the idea here is that quick changes that a user could make on the while they are going through or consuming a report and consuming it in that way. All right, so let's get into the demo itself. Don't have a lot of slides actually to go through, so it's quite a demo heavy session. We can get started. Let me share my screen. I'm also going to go off camera to just make sure my screen share is smooth. I'll see if I can pop in a little later on. All right, so actually before I go into the demo, I think I'll just take a few minutes to talk about the workarounds, right? So I'm mentioning workarounds here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the workarounds because the aim of the session is not to actually go through the workarounds, but to actually go through the inbuilt functionality that is available in Power BI now. But the two main workarounds that I have seen now, this is something that this requirement is something that I've seen, on numerous occasions over the years, and there have been certain features in Power BI that that made it possible, but it wasn't designed to be used for those particular requirements, right? So obviously they were a bit cumbersome or troublesome to develop and to manage, and there was a lot of it was very time consuming as well. So one of the things I will actually demonstrate one of the workarounds, but another workaround that I wanted to quickly touch on is something that you might have seen yourselves or might have used before, is the combination of a custom measure and a standalone table or a dimension. You can't really call it a dimension, it's more of a table. So for example, if you wanted to switch between currencies in a particular report, let's say between LKR and USD, you might have created a separate or standalone table with just those two values, LKR and USD, and then you might have created a another measure which basically sums up the LKR value if LKR is selected in that particular dimension using via a filter or slicer, and the same way for USD as well. So that's one of the ways that people sort of made it possible to have these dynamic visuals, but as you can imagine, that does have a bit of work to do on the model side of things. So this is not something that you can just pass on to a report engineer and say, you know what, this is the report requirement. Can you build this for me? Because that does require some sort of a background or some development in the model level to begin with. So that requires a bit of forethought and planning and design as well at a model level. And that also means that you're taking report requirements as a design consideration into the model, which is also not that recommended. So, the workarounds, they could have, it might have been successful, but might not have been the ideal way of going about it. Another very popular workaround was the usage of bookmarks. So I'll actually quickly go through that and just show you an example of how that was set up so that we can sort of compare that and the new functionality that is available in Power BI and how they compare. All right, so let me stop screen sharing. All right, so I have a, hopefully everyone can see the screen. I have a quick, very simple report I've created here. You can see two visuals, both the bar charts, one looking at sales quantity by group. So the group here is a group of regions. So we have North America, Europe, and Pacific region. We have sales quantity, and the same is also broken up. The sales amount is also broken up by the same dimension. And as you can see here, we have a couple of buttons up here, so you can see that territory has been selected. So if I wanted to quickly switch between now looking at sales quantity by group and sales quantity by, let's say, product category, I could click on this, and that switches everything on the page over to now being broken down by product category and sales quantity by product category and sales amount by product category as well. The same goes for year as well. I could do the same and switch between the different fiscal year breakdowns, so sales quantity and sales amount. Now this looks simple enough, but via the usage of bookmarks, it actually does become quite complex or complicated to set up and manage. So let's just go to the Power BI desktop, the report, to see what actually all of this entails in the backend. Just give me a minute to share that screen as well. Okay, hope you can see the screen as well. Now it's the same report that we were looking at. And let me just close this out. It's the same report that we were looking at. So if I go into the view tab and I'm going to need two panes to show you what I've done here. So we need the bookmarks pane, obviously, because this has been using big bookmarks. And then we also need the selection pane, which will also list all of the visuals that are on a page. So you can see I have three bookmarks that I've created, year, product, and territory. And it is actually the bookmark select or the navigator that I have added here. So down here you can see that we have something called the bookmark navigator. So that's what I've added here. So that automatically picks up any new bookmarks that I add and presents them here. So in that I have three bookmarks, and if I just quickly switch between them, you can see. So this is the year one, and this is product. Give it a minute. And this is territory. So what exactly is the difference between these three bookmarks? If I go over to the selection pane, so that lists all the visuals or elements that is within this report page. But off the top, from what you can see here, it's only supposed to have about 5 or 6, right? But we have much more than that here. That's because it's actually all of the different versions of the visuals are in this page, but hidden, right? So if I click on here, you can see that there's certain visuals that have been hidden, right? And that's shown by this the icon here. And you can see these are the only visuals that are available or visible. So same goes for product as well. There's certain visuals that are visible and certain visuals that have been hidden. And same goes for territory as well. So the idea behind this workaround was that you would create for each and every bookmark separate visuals, basically, so that the user thinks it's something that's happening on the fly and just this is how Power BI works. But in the back end, what's actually happening is that you're just hiding and showing visuals when these different bookmarks are created. So one of the biggest problems with this is the time it takes to develop, right? So adding another, now I only have 2 visuals on this, so it's much more easily managed. But when you have the different slices on a page, and then you have about 5, 6 different visuals, it can become quite complicated in managing, because you have to be very careful and hide all of the visuals that should not be seen in this page, and then also make sure that it's the proper ones that are seen. And then on the other side, another problem there was, if there were any change made to one of these visuals, you also had to make sure to change or update that change in all of the copies of the visuals as well. So if you had, for example, 3 copies of this, sales quantity by year, sales quantity by product, and sales quantity by territory, you would have to make that change in all 3 of those, right? So now multiply that by however many visuals you have set up like this, and it can become quite time consuming and cumbersome. So while this was a good enough workaround, it again has a bit of some downsides to it. I would say one of the advantages is definitely that you don't have to do any model level changes to make this happen, right? You don't have to create any new measures, or you don't have to create any standalone tables. You can with the standard model that has been, let's say, created and provided to a report engineer, he or she is able to get this report requirement done. But another downside to it is, again, the number of visuals that are going to increase on a page. And I have noticed the more visuals you add, even though they are hidden, at least in terms of the Power BI desktop performance, it can slow things down a tad, especially when you have multiple pages that have, again, multiple visuals that are hidden and so on. So that's what most of us did when it came to catering to this particular requirement. So along the way, over the last year or so, there have been 2 new features added to Power BI. One of these features is actually quite old, but it serves the purpose in terms of what we're trying to do here. So I'm going to quickly go through it as well. And the second feature is actually a bit more recent, and it was actually introduced, I think, somewhere in the summer of last year, and also improved upon in November. It's still a preview feature, but now it has been enabled automatically. So it seems well on its way to being a standard feature. So let's quickly get into the first feature that we can use. And we'll try to go through some pros and cons of each of these features to see what, kind of what works best for each requirement. All right, so let me switch to my Power BI app. Go back to the workspace. And in this workspace, there's a, so I'm an admin in this workspace. So I can confirm that this works for the lowest level of access that you can give into to a workspace as well. So that is the viewer level. Even at a viewer level, this feature is possible. So that feature is, first you have to change this setting. Now this can be changed on the Power BI desktop side as well on the Power BI service side. It is to personalize visuals. So this is by default, it's toggled off. So you can toggle this on to allow report readers to personalize visuals to suit their needs. You can save that, right? So after that's saved, I can go into this report. Now it looks the same as it did earlier, but you'll see this new icon up here that says personalize this visual. So it's not just me that's going to see it. Since I have enabled this for this particular report altogether, you all the users that are seeing this who has access to this report will see this icon. So when they have access to this, or when this has been toggled on, this is what's possible. You can click on personalize, and these are the options that you get to change it. So as you can see, it's quite extensive. So you can even change the visualization type. Now, these you are limited to the out-of-the-box visualizations, but even that is quite a lot. And let's say if I want to change this to some sort of a trusted column chart. These are the x-axis, so I have the different sales territory hierarchies. If I wanted to add, for example, another measure into this y-axis, I could do the same thing as well. So let's say, for example, we have quantity here. Let's say I want to add to this y-axis the sales amount. Let me quickly change this to this one. That'll work better. And the line, I want to add sales amount. And I could add some column legends, even small multiples and tooltips. If I wanted to add some new tooltips, I could do the same thing. And then how I can save this is by creating a personal bookmark. So each user is able to create their own personal bookmark. So if I were to create this bookmark called custom territory, and I could save this. And if I go back out and I come back into this report, I can access this, or the user can access this through their personal bookmark. They can also save this and make it default so that this is the default view that they see when they come to this page. So by doing that, they've essentially changed their visual, right? This visual that we're seeing. So and so what's possible here is actually, as you can see in the personalization options, there's a lot. You can remove all of these the values that are here and actually replace them with anything that is available to this user in the model. So even if it says territory here, they could actually remove all of these, remove these fields, and replace this with the product. I'm not sure why they would choose to do that, but it is possible, right? So that creates, obviously the flexibility that this provides the user is quite high compared to what we saw earlier in terms of the bookmarks, right? Definitely something to keep in mind. And like I said, you can save this again, and this will be the view that they see. Now, if we take a couple of minutes to kind of go through the pros and the cons of this feature, right? So at least from my point of view, definitely one of the pros is that it's very flexible. So that if you enable this feature for end users, in terms of the flexibility, in terms of what they can change, it's the highest, I believe, in terms of allowing for dynamic visuals. But then again, the downside to that is that it's going to be quite hard to manage, right? Giving this level of flexibility to end users means it becomes very hard for you to manage. As if it was some sort of a report that was, the requirements were captured for earlier and then shared to, let's say, hundreds of users. Allowing all hundreds of users this level of flexibility, or in terms of being this level of flexibility means that it's going to become quite hard for you to manage and administrate, especially in terms of getting feedback and issues and bug fixes and bugs and so on, because you're not going to be able to validate what the user is seeing against what you have built and shipped as part of the original report, right? So and then another downside to that is also it can reports are normally purpose built, right? And you can't build a report obviously to meet the requirements of everyone. Normally reports are built for a particular department, for a particular business process, and so on. So by allowing users to do it, you're also saying that the purpose of that report can be changed depending on what the user feels like it could be. So again, can create a bit of clutter, and it might be a bit difficult to administrate in terms of the BI at your organization. All right, so let me go back out. Just one more thing on this as well, that this also works on an app. So I have created, if your users are consuming it through the normal workspace view or access that is okay, that works in the workspace access control as well. If your users are accessing reports and dashboards through apps, this works in an app as well. So if I go to the app here I've set up on very quickly, you can see that I have the chart that should work here. That's odd. Oh, yes, that might have been because I was an admin, but there was a possibility. I will have to double check on that, but I did see this icon in the app view as well. It might be because I was an admin, but I'll have to double check on confirm on that app access and if that's possible as well. But definitely in the workspace view, it is possible for users to be able to do this. And then really the focus of today's session is on the second feature that is available in Power BI, which is a bit more recent, is the addition of field parameters. So let me get on to the Power BI desktop, share my screen, and let's see how that works. Okay, so I have this is a report that is connected to a live data set on Power BI. And so if I switch to that model that I published previously, this is what that model is. It's a very simple model that's based on AdventureWorks. So we have sales, we have product, date, territory, customer, and so on, right? So these are the dimensions and the fact tables that are available currently. And field parameters work. One thing to note about field parameters is that you cannot create them directly on a live connection or a Power BI desktop that is connected to some sort of a live connection. So you'll have to do it on a local model. And then after publishing, however, any reports that are connected or any files that are connected to that Power BI dataset will have access to the field parameters as well. So let me create the field parameter. You can create parameters through the modeling tab under parameters. A new parameter, you can click on fields and you can create a new parameter. Now, I'm going to name this my dimension parameter. And I'm going to add a couple of dimensions. Now we were looking at year, we were looking at a product category, and we were looking at the sales territory as well. So let me add those same fields and we'll see how that works here. So I'm going to add fiscal year, one, and then I'm going to expand on product as well. I'm going to select category here. I'm going to do the same for sales territory, and I believe it was group. All right, so I've called it dimension parameter and I've done this. I don't need this slicer on this page, so I can just create it. And once that's created, you can see that now we have a new table and a field as well in the field section. So if I clicked on this, this is what you would see. It's a DAX measure, right? And you can see that we have fiscal year, name of date, and then the fiscal year field, category, and so on. So, you know, the UI takes care of this for you, but if you wanted to, you could create this yourself as well. I chose to do it through the UI. So I've created this dimension parameter. What I'm going to do is now I want this available on the reports that I've connected to this model. So I'm going to publish this, and then we'll see how we can use these parameters to create some dynamic visuals. See, I'm going to publish it to the same workspace, replace it. All right. So once that's done, I'm going to minimize this, go out to my report visual. I'm going to do a quick refresh to make sure that I get that newly published model. I should see the dimension parameter here as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave this bookmarks and all of these things as it is, but I am going to duplicate this to make this go a little faster. So I'll duplicate this overview. And what I'm going to do is I don't need all of these visuals in this page, right? Since I duplicated all of this comes through, so I don't need it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete. Maybe I can delete it. Okay, I'm going to have to unhide it, I guess, and then. Okay, now we just have the tool, and I'm going to get rid of this as well. Not going to be using that. I do, however, need a slicer, and I'm going to add a slicer, and I'm going to populate this with the field dimension parameter now. And I can see we have fiscal year, category, and group showing up. I'm going to change this to a tile slicer. And I'm going to kind of adjust this. Yeah, obviously I can make this look a little nicer when I have the time. But what I can do now is I will need to update these visuals as well to be using this dimension parameter. All right, after that's done, now we're looking at the same that we were looking at earlier, sales quantity by fiscal year and sales amount by fiscal year. But however, if I were to select something, you can see how the dimensions or the axis changes, right? So same thing that we were doing earlier in terms of the bookmarks and all of those visuals that we had to hide and unhide and manage. Now you can do that by just using this dimension parameter field for the particular visuals that you want to dynamically update using this slicer, right? So that's the first sort of level in this. The next level we can go into is actually we could go into a level deeper or a level lower than this. I'm gonna I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna basically duplicate this. And what I'm gonna do is let's say I want to see the different values of this group and the fiscal years and so on. What I can do is I can quickly just switch this to show values of selected field. And I can have this now showing me a breakdown or the actual values for that group field in this second slicer, right? So if I have this down here, what that means is I am able to, let me kind of grab this up. Fiscal year. I'm able to see the different years. I can now select and focus on a particular year if I wanted to, right? Yeah, I could also select multiple years if I wanted to. If I want to just, select one or select all, I could, by default, it selects all. And the same thing would work for category as well. Accessories, bikes, clothing, components, and so on. And the same works for the group as well. Now I've chosen the tile filter here on slice, obviously, but this works with the normal drop downs and the lists and so on as well. So this is also another way that I see of potentially limiting the number of slices on a page. So that's something I've noticed as well. Users generally tend to want as many of the attributes on a page to be able to slice and dice. But what that does is that adds a lot of slices onto a page, right? It starts to look like a paginated report. So this is potentially a way of limiting the number of slices that you can have. Because one slicer can handle, the breakdown of multiple attributes. So that's how we can use these dimensions and how we can slice the the x-axis, so to speak, of visuals. What if I wanted to change the measures? That's possible as well. So let's go back out into the model. And let me quickly show you another thing as well. If you were not happy with the names that this had, for example, its categories not quite descriptive enough for you, you can actually rename this here itself, right? And if this again was not enough, you could call this territory. And this only changes the name, but the underlying field, as you can see, is still referencing the same, the field. So that's not going to change. All right, so we have the dimension parameter. Let me add another parameter to add my filters, add my measures. So let me call this my measure parameter. Now I don't have a lot of measures, only have the two. One thing to note is you have to have explicitly created the measures. You cannot create implicit measures will not work, right? So I have two explicit measures that I have created. I'm going to add these two, sales amount and sales quantity. I'm going to remove this again, and I'm going to click on create. Okay, so now I have another field here called measure parameter. I can rename this the same way I did the previous ones. I'm happy with this. And let me save and publish again. Okay, go back out, quickly refresh. Let me, you can see how this was now renamed product and territory. I will duplicate this again. And what I'll do is I'll get rid of one of these visuals. I do not need two visuals now, because I'm going to add a, let me make this a little, for example, it'll work. I'm going to add a, let me duplicate this as well. The newly created measure parameter to this. And I will also have to make sure that the y-axis is using the measure parameters. Sorry, I put it into the wrong mesh. Let's go into y-axis. And now you can see how I can switch between the sales amount and the sales quantity. And I just need the one visual, and I can switch between these different dimensions and the different measures as well. So potentially what I've done is, I've cut down on the number of additional measures that I need to create, any dynamic measures I had to create, or, in terms of just purely in terms of the report elements, I've eliminated potentially, tens of visuals from this page, right? Obviously, it's a very simple example, but you can, imagine how many, how much more this can be extended towards, and in terms of eliminating the number of visuals on the page, but also allowing for, different types of analysis and user report consumption. All right, that's pretty much what I have to share with you today. So if there are no, maybe I'll just keep it up for a minute, just see if there's any questions, and we can wrap up.
So if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or use the raise hand function and unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, doesn't look like there's going to be any questions. Anyway, you can reach out to me on my handles and follow up.
Yeah.
There is one question, yes.
For
Personalized, yes, for
go ahead.
personalized, Lidani asked for personalized visuals can be limited using RLS rules. Yes, in terms of the data that they'll be seeing, for sure, yes. If you're talking about object level security, the same would work as well. It'll be the whatever object level, restrictions that you've imposed on a particular user. Then those are the fields that they'll be able to see when they are selecting or changing the visuals. And something to add as well, something I might have missed, you can enable personalized or personalized visuals for just one particular visual in a report as well if you wanted to. You don't have to enable it for the entire report. You can actually just enable it for selective visuals if you choose to.
Yeah, I guess there aren't any more questions. So thank you very much, Madushan, for that very useful and I think a very handy demo. I think it could really declutter a lot of reports and development. So thank you very much, Madushan. And with that, we basically come to an end of today's session. So I'd like to thank all of you all for joining. And all the previous sessions would be uploaded on the Power BI community YouTube channel. So please feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel and get notified when the latest recordings are updated. So thank you, and we'll hope to see you again next time. Thanks.